Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in welcoming our television and webcast viewers. My name is Fred Mifflin, President of the Canadian Club of Toronto. Viewers, we are very pleased that you are joining us today. For 120 years, the Canadian Club has been proud to provide a forum for leaders in every aspect of society to share their ideas with us and to challenge our thinking. We're committed to providing a welcoming venue for discussion and debate on issues that impact our daily lives. Through our programs and activities, we offer access to dynamic political, business, and public figures from across the country and around the world, like today's guest speaker, the Honourable Kevin Flynn. Before I formally introduce the Minister, here's a snapshot of some of our upcoming events. On Wednesday, February the 8th, Chris Huskilson, the President and CEO of Emera Inc., will address our guests on the evolution of Emera from a regional electricity utility to a North American energy leader. And on Wednesday, February the 15th, we'll welcome the President and CEO of Hydro-Québec, Éric Martel, in partnership with Le Club Canadien de Toronto. To order tickets or to learn more about our upcoming activities, please visit our website at canadianclub.org. You can also join the conversation via Twitter or Instagram by following us at CDNCLUBTO or by using that hashtag. I want to express special thanks to our Ontario Series sponsors, Bruce Power, represented by Frank Saunders, and to the Carpenters District Council of Ontario, represented by Nikki Holland, and as well to today's event sponsor, the Ontario General Contractors Association, represented by Clive Thurston. Thank you for your generous support. And now today's guest speaker. The Honourable Kevin Flynn, Ontario's Minister of Labour, has the tough job of ensuring that our workplaces are safe and harmonious. It's a role he has embraced since 2014. During this time, he's been instrumental in introducing changes that have made workplaces more responsive to the needs of those that work in them. The Minister, who has served in the Ontario Legislature since 2003, adopts a continuous improvement approach to the province's labour practices. Recently, the Occupational Health and Safety Act was amended to more effectively prevent and address workplace sexual harassment and violence. Improvements have also been made in the approach to workplace mental health. A strategy is being developed to help close the gender wage gap. He's extended workplace protections, especially for vulnerable workers. Inspections are on the rise. Minimum wage also got a bump thanks to the Minister's efforts. His boss, the Premier, has told him to keep up the good work. So, workplaces can expect further improvements when labour-related legislation is reviewed and enhanced. Minister Flynn brings a wide range of related experience to his current portfolio. He owned a successful business and served on the Oakville and Halton Regional Council for over 18 years. At Queen's Park, he served as a parliamentary assistant in a number of key ministries, including transportation, education, and labour. He was instrumental in the consultation process for the bill that ended mandatory retirement in Ontario. At the end of his remarks, the minister has kindly agreed to take questions, so please complete one of the Q&A cards on your table, and one of our volunteers will collect them. Minister Flynn, welcome. The Canadian Club of Toronto's podium is yours.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here today. And Fred, thank you very much for that nice introduction. Special thanks to the Canadian Club for inviting me here today and for the work that you've all done together to put this event on. I'm truly grateful to the opportunity to speak today and especially to speak to the audience. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy day to be here this afternoon. I know the past few weeks have been pretty hectic for most people. But I hope everybody here in the room today had a restful holiday season. I think it was only a few weeks ago that we welcomed in the new year, and I'm sure that many of you took the time to reflect on the past year and on some of your own accomplishments, the milestones that you may have reached, and the projects that you got completed. But I also hope you took the time, as I did, to reflect on how lucky I feel to be a resident in this province and to be a citizen of this great country. I firmly believe that the opportunities we have to be at our very best and achieve the success that we've achieved to date is because we're fortunate enough to live in this great province. We're all living in Ontario because of the choice that somebody made to live or to work here. You might be a recent immigrant, for example. Maybe your grandparents came from another country. Or maybe you've descended from some of our earliest settlers. Or perhaps you're part of our proud First Nations communities in this province and country. But whatever the reason, people came to Ontario because they wanted to be here. They wanted to raise a family here, and they wanted to work here. That's the story of our province, and this history of acceptance into our diverse cultural landscape really represents the very values that define us as Ontarians and as Canadians. Everybody I know in this room would have their own individual story. But this province, Ontario, is being built by the inclusiveness we feel together, by the sense of the freedom that surrounds us. As we go about our daily lives, we raise our families, building up the institutions that make this province famous, and of course, simply going to work. Now, government, I believe, has a very positive and a very significant role to play in building that inclusive and that fair society. It's got a critical role in ensuring that everybody in this province has the opportunity and the chance to prosper. And as citizens, what I believe is our duty to reinforce that value to each other. Our value as workers, our value as parents, our value as volunteers, and our value as caregivers. As a government, we can reinforce this necessary sense of self-worth through legislation. And that's what I'm here to talk about. Today, what I want to do is touch on a few initiatives, and I want to discuss why those initiatives are so vital to the future of our workforce, to the future of our economy, and to this entire province as a whole. In the context of my role as Minister of Labour, this means that legislation that protects our workers and provides the kind of positive environment where everybody can live a fulfilling and a rewarding life. Now, many of us define ourselves by the work we do. Most people these days spend more time with their co-workers each day than they indeed do with their own families. So what we need to do is ensure that people's experiences at work are beneficial to the economy, to the province, but to themselves as individuals as well. Health and safety needs to be at the core of that. And while my ministry may provide the guidance, may provide the regulations that keep workers in this province safe, everyone who gets up in the morning and goes to work is asked to play their part in that as well. Ontario remains one of the safest places in the world to work. I want to keep it that way, and I want to make it even safer. Now, somebody that's in this room today, very early in my tenure as the Minister of Labour, said, you know, wouldn't it be nice if the Minister of Labour just talked about health and safety? It didn't matter what audience he was talking to. And as a politician, you do get to talk to a number of audiences. You talk to lawyers, you talk to teachers, you talk to people that work in libraries, you talk to daycare workers, you talk to a variety of people. And often you wouldn't think that they would be the audience that would respond to a health and safety message. Often when you're speaking to a Chamber of Commerce, perhaps, you get that feeling that their eyes glaze over a little bit and think, well, that's about somebody else. That's about somebody that works in a high-hazard occupation. It's not really about me. But I want to tell you a story that happened to me, and I want you to put yourself in the role of being either a parent or a grandparent. And if you go into that role, perhaps the message is a little bit more clear. And I want you to think back, those of you that have had this experience, I want you to think back to the very first day of your child's very first job. They come home from work, they're walking about 6 feet off the ground, they've been through a competitive process, somebody's picked them. Somebody said, after the interview, I want you to come and work here. Those young people are going to go into that work site and they're going to prove to that person that hired them that they made the right decision. And some of that is good. Some of it's going to involve the work ethic that Ontario is famous for, We work hard in this province. But also some of it, in their zeal to impress, may involve taking a shortcut, may involve perhaps proving they can do the job a little faster than the person before, and it may indeed result in an injury. And I'm as guilty as anybody. When my son came home, first job was at a Dairy Queen. I asked him how much money they were paying him. I asked him if he got a uniform, and did I have to pick him up after work? Right? 3 very normal questions that any parent would ask. I never once stopped to ask him if he knew what to do if he was asked to do something that was unsafe. If he got put in a situation where he was asked to do something that he didn't really understand. Now, fortunately, he didn't get in that situation. He had a very successful career at Dairy Queen, and he got the swirl down right. But he did move on, and I didn't make the mistake the second time around. He went and got himself a job in a very high hazard area, and that was, we were putting a tunnel under Niagara Falls, and it was part of a hydro project. And basically, they had Big Becky, the biggest boring machine in the world, was boring its way under the underground. And if it went in a kilometer, they had a conveyor belt that was a kilometer long that brought the dirt out. The dirt came out the conveyor belt, went about 100 feet in the air, maybe even higher, went over the Niagara River, and got dumped in the island in the middle of the river. If the tunnel went to 3 kilometers in, the conveyor belt went 3 kilometers long. So they put my son on with an electrician, I think it was. And they just said, just be his eyes and ears, that the electrician had to do some work. Well, the electrician told my son that he didn't really need him and to get lost. And my son remembers a conversation I had with him before he went into the tunnel. I said, Nigel, there's people, I said, don't be stupid. There's people in that tunnel that know what they're doing. They're trained in health and safety. Listen to them, don't do anything crazy. Make sure you pay attention, make sure you're told. Well, this person told him to do something he shouldn't do. Instead of getting lost, what he did is he went around the corner and he stood there. And he said, Dad, it wasn't 20 seconds later that I heard grunting and groaning and tools falling. The man had fallen in the hopper. The hopper was going to the conveyor belt, which was shrouded, which took the rock out of the tunnel, which was going to take him 100 feet in the air and drop him in the island in the middle of Niagara, the Niagara River. The man was as good as dead. Nobody knew he was on the belt, and he had no way to stop the belt. Well, my son came out. I thought he hit a red button. He tells me he pulled a rope. The conveyor belt stopped. They got the man out. He was injured badly. They fired him. They gave my son a $75 gift certificate to Best Buy for doing this. But it does have a happy ending. It does have a happy ending. And that is, the man got his job back. And he wasn't just an electrician. He actually owned a bar and a restaurant in Niagara Falls. And my son has free food and drink for the rest of his life as a result of this. But the point is that I didn't have a conversation the first time around. The second time I did. And I'm convinced that that had a role to play in saving this man's life. So if you go home today, if you'll take 20 seconds, if you'll take 30 seconds, I don't want you to sit down with some young person, sort of preach them to death on health and safety. I want you to go home and just mention it to them. Just put the seed in there. Just ask them if they've thought about it at their own job. Because you never know when that comes back, when that person will have a choice to make. They can either take the shortcut or they can do the right thing. And sometimes it's tough to do that on job sites, I know that. But I'll tell you, there's no better phone call you'll ever get from your son or from your daughter when they call and they say, Dad, I think I saved somebody's life today. So if you will help me in that regard, that will make my role as a Minister of Labor, I think, a lot easier, because that's a type of story that I think really resonates with people. It reminds us that it's not always about our associations, it's not always about the rules and the regulations that our government can bring in, but it's also about those conversations that we have with each other. It's about the way we exchange ideas. I think this drives home the point, though, really, that health and safety really is an issue for us all, and it's really something that belongs in our homes, it belongs in our offices, and it belongs on our job sites as well. So moving forward, I think if we're able to build the kind of province we want, we need to bring this message of safety together with a message of opportunity for this province. In today's Ontario, the opportunity is there. The workplace we know is changing at an unprecedented rate. Businesses are competing globally and successfully. in a global economy that brings with it new challenges and brings those challenges to us on an almost daily basis. But businesses in Ontario have risen to that challenge. The Ontario economy in relative terms is doing very, very well, and that's something that our government is very proud of. But a lot of the credit has to go to the businesses and to the people that work at those businesses that are helping this province move forward. Now, our province recently created the most jobs in Canada just last year. Our unemployment rate is the lowest in the country. Ontario continues to be the top choice for when people from outside this jurisdiction are looking for places to invest, for foreign investment. And we're leading the G7, including the United States of America, in economic growth. And I really, truly believe that the balanced approach that we took at the end of the last recession has created the framework for the economic growth and the job creation that we're seeing in this province today. We're right in the middle of the largest investment in infrastructure in the history of this province. Almost a $140 billion plan. It includes investments in transit. It includes investment in transportation projects that are going to keep the goods moving over the border and through our country. We're also investing billions of dollars to improve our schools, to improve our hospitals. We're famous for our skilled work here. We're famous for healthcare. We're building that highly skilled workforce of the future by making college and university more affordable, by making tuition free in this province for about 150,000 students. And we have an apprenticeship system in this province that I believe is second to none, and people around the world know that. But our business communities, those companies that produce high-quality goods and the services and the employees in those companies that promote the province as a great place to do business, they deserve the credit for the strong investments that they're making as well. I'm talking about investments in our communities when I talk about this, investments in workers and investments in their own families. The partnership that this government has created with the business community and the workers of this province is critical to an economy that, while setting an example for the rest of the country, still has some room to grow and still has some room to improve. So while our business community is moving forward, obviously real opportunity for workers should grow along with it. Jobs for young people, for example, stability for working parents. Now, that's one of the reasons why we launched the Changing Workplaces Review. This is the first time we've simultaneously reviewed the Employment Standards Act and the Labor Relations Act, first time in the province's history. The review was long overdue. Now, just think about it. The last time we reviewed these acts, email was in its infancy. We didn't have Twitter. We didn't have Facebook. There was no such thing as on-demand television. Live streaming hadn't been invented. And smartphones belonged on Star Trek. Now, the world's changed a lot since then. This is the mid-90s I'm talking about. It's changed exponentially. So has the economy, and so has the workplaces. When we first started this process, I thought we'd be hearing from lawyers, and we did. I thought we'd be hearing from the heads of corporations, GR firms, we did. From organized labor, we certainly did. All that was true, but I soon realized as we delved into these issues that the issues we're dealing with are the ones that ordinary people are talking about around their own kitchen tables at home. As parents, we always want to believe that our children will be better off than we were. That's the way it's been for generations, so the same should be said for the next generation. But for many families in the province of Ontario today, this just isn't the case. Many of our children are going to university, to college. They get that good education that we tell them they need, but then they struggle to find those jobs. Often the jobs they do find are part-time, temporary, contract work. For others, the working world is even tougher. There are more vulnerable workers in the province of Ontario today, with more people living in poverty, and frankly, it should be less. Nearly 1 in 5 workers are now part-timers, earning half as much an hour as somebody that works full-time. Nearly a quarter of part-time workers are only making the minimum wage. Temporary employment continues to rise, and get this, at an astounding rate of 3.5% annually. More than 10% of all workers are now involved in some form of temporary work, and we simply have too many people that are forced to work more than one job simply to get by with the basics. to pay the hydro bills, to pay the rent, to pay food. So what could all this mean if we don't do something about it? Well, it means that there's a real danger that the next generation, our children, their children, will be worse off than we are today. The dream we had as young people could one day be out of the reach for the young people of today. Now, I remain hopeful that we can still make their dreams become realities, and that's why the Changing Workplaces Review was so badly needed. But there was another reason it was needed, and this is an important point to remember. The review was also about improving the business models that we use in the province of Ontario. The fact that we have vulnerable workers in this province, the fact that precarious work is on the rise, is in some part due to the fact that some businesses don't play by the rules. These are the businesses that don't pay their workers properly. These are the businesses that think they don't have to pay vacation pay. For somehow have got to the point that they feel that employment and labor laws simply don't apply to them. Each month at the Ministry of Labor, we receive about 1,500 employment standards complaints. That's 1,500 ordinary citizens like you and I who feel for some reason they're being treated unfairly and often illegally by employers in the province of Ontario today. That's unacceptable to me, and it shows there are simply still too many businesses that feel that somehow they can take advantage of people and try to find ways to get around the laws that we put in place in the mid-90s to protect workers and to protect businesses. And it simply is not fair. Ontario has always been a place that has aspired to decent workplaces. It's not fair to people trying to make a better life for themselves. It's not fair to their families. And it's also not fair to those law-abiding businesses, which are the vast majority of employers in the province of Ontario, who strengthen our province for both employers and for employees, those who provide the kind of quality jobs that build and grow our economy. Now, our government believes in staying ahead of the times when it comes to jobs in the economy. I think you'll agree with me that businesses need to do the same in order to stay competitive. So in order to level the playing field, the review was launched in 2015. The direction that I gave to the special advisors undertaking the review excuse me, was to solicit input and feedback from the stakeholders and from the public. And I wanted them to carefully examine the input that they received. Results from the initial consultation showed a number of things, but if I could summarize, what it showed is that the province's business community was looking for more efficiency and more flexibility because they knew they had to compete in a global economy that was changing daily. What Labor said to us, if I can summarize again, they highlighted what they saw as a growing imbalance in the workplace. Other advocates called for better protection for those that are working in the vulnerable sectors of our economy, precarious workers. But the response was very, very encouraging. People did step forward. We had hundreds of submissions, more than 1,000 suggestions and proposals. The responses we received and the research that was conducted was compiled then into an interim report. And we released that this past summer, and we asked people to come back and see the advisors again. The report was very thorough. It outlined the objectives. It outlined the trends they were seeing. It outlined very specific themes they were seeing in the workplace. But it also outlined some of the issues that needed to be discussed further and that should come forward for the second phase of the review. The review included a period where the special advisors were asked to lay out a number of options. Now, not recommendations. I want to be very, very clear here. This is a very important distinction. There's been no recommendations made yet. There's been a lot of discussions. The recommendations are around the corner, but basically what they did is they highlighted an issue. They said, this is what we're hearing a lot about. This is something that may need to be changed. These are some of the things you could do about it. You could do nothing at all. You could say, we know something's wrong there, but you know what, we're good with it. We'll just maintain the status quo. And the list goes right down to doing something that some might consider quite radical. And it really just outlined the options that government could take. And then we went back out to the community again, or the advisors did, and they are in the process now of finalizing what will be some recommendations. Everything is on the table. But in the end, I think what you'll see is the solutions are going to likely be somewhere in between those extremes. What we are seeking is balance. We're seeking fairness, we're seeking balance. We need an economic framework that protects workers in this province. But it's also got to support the businesses who do the hiring in the first place. The changing nature of work has not shut the door on this. While many of the concerns and the solutions that were raised during the review are quite varied and there's a number of opinions, specific outcomes perhaps in some people's mind are very, very different as well. But I saw some commonality, and I believe that our partners on both sides of this issue do share a similar goal. I believe that both the business community and the people that work in those businesses see the important value of boosting business while building a province where people want to work, they want to prosper, and they want to share in the prosperity. I believe that they understand, and I believe that people in this room understand that the two are not mutually exclusive. You can have a very competitive economy. You can have businesses that compete globally, and you can treat people decently. You can treat people the way that you'd like to be treated. You could treat people the way that you'd like your kids to be treated when they enter the workforce. So after all this hard work and all the valuable input by Ontarians throughout this province, I'll be given the report. It's going to land on my desk somewhere around the end of next month. Then I've been asked by the Premier to take the recommendations of the special advisors and propose some amendments to the legislation if things need to be changed. In the end, the Changing Workplaces Review is really about answering this question. What do we want work in the province of Ontario to look like? I know the workforce that I entered is very, very different than the workplace that we ask young people to enter today. So what it really is, it's about laws and it's about regulations and it's about rules and all sorts of other things that we do at the Ministry of Labour. But it's an examination of our collective values and what really matters to us. It's an exercise in listening to the concerns of ordinary Ontarians as well as the potential solutions that everyone has offered. It's about protecting the competitiveness that makes Ontario such a vibrant economy. It's about protecting those businesses that do operate within the law, that do work well with their employees, that do work well with the unions. It's about making sure that the playing field is even in this province so that everybody can prosper. Now, I view fairness as a key component of any modern economy. People need to know that the circumstances are not stacked against them. They need to know that you can still get ahead in this province if you work hard. People need to know that they have the same chance to thrive as anybody else in this province. That's regardless of your race, of your age, your sex, your economic circumstances, and all the things that may make us a little different from each other. We have a lot in common, though. Our economy and our workforce must be free of forces that promote some while leave others behind. Now, earlier today, I asked you to consider the dreams of our children. Now, I want you to focus now specifically on the dreams and the hopes of our daughters, of our sisters, of our mothers, our wives, our granddaughters. What if they were denied the equality that they deserved as just ordinary Ontarians, as Canadian citizens? What if they didn't get that? And sadly, in some respects, that's a reality in our province today. But it's a reality that this government is looking to change through our efforts to close the gender wage gap. Last summer, we received a report that outlined what we needed to do to eliminate the barrier that prevents women's full participation in the workforce. And we were able to act on some of them right away. Some of them were very easy to act upon. We're adding 100,000 new childcare spaces. We're increasing our transparency in the public service by making salary data public so that everybody knows what men are making, everybody knows what women are making. If there's a difference between the two, it's going to be very, very apparent. We're making changes to how we develop policy. We're offering employers resources and training in how they may tackle this problem themselves, but that's not enough. There's so much work to be done, so much more work to be done. So we've established also now a working group of experts. They're going to take other recommendations that they heard from the review and from others, and they're going to solidify them into a very firm action plan. That group's first meeting is this week, and I'm looking forward to tracking their progress over the next several months. Now, the sad fact about this issue is that if you talk to a young woman, they think this issue is beat. They think that we solved this issue a while ago. They're working in a part-time job in a fast food restaurant, and they're working next to a guy named Bob, and Bob's making $11.40 an hour, and so are they, doing the same job. But you ask that woman how things are going in her late 20s. You ask them how things change when they decide to start a family. And that's when you see that we haven't tackled this issue very well at all, and we need to. And I'm sure there's women in this room today who can tell us stories about how they were held back in the workplace. Perhaps they were passed over for promotions because of just ordinary issues affecting their life. Well, that's simply unacceptable. It's an issue that needs addressing now, and we're determined to address it. Of course, after all this, we still need to make sure that that workplace is safe. In the past, the emphasis was always put on physical injuries, though, and that will remain one of our main focuses. As I said at the start, Ontario remains one of the safest places you can work on this entire planet. We've come a long way in decreasing incidents thanks to your help over the past decade. We've dropped somewhere between 40 and 50% in incidents in the past 10 years. And I'm very, very proud to say that it's a work that you have done that makes Ontario one of the safest places in this world to work. But I think we've overlooked something. I think we've overlooked the invisible injuries, the ones you can't see, but have just as much of an impact on our jobs and on our lives. And there I'm talking, of course, about mental health, mental wellness. Now, I'm very, very proud of the presumptive legislation we passed unanimously last spring. This legislation is helping our first responders suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder by getting them the necessary treatment they need and by getting them that treatment very, very quickly. But we're also helping them to develop prevention plans to make sure it doesn't happen in the first place. One of the things that was seared into my brain as I talked to the experts is that at this point in time, post-traumatic stress disorder is incurable. Once you have it for the rest of your life. You can deal with it well, you can cope with it well, you can lead a very significant life, you can lead a great life, but you'll always be dealing with it. And it struck me then, it's one of those times when the penny drops, well, if there's no cure, we've got to do everything we possibly can to make sure that it doesn't happen in the first place. And that's why we're reaching out to employers. We're helping them develop prevention plans. We're reaching out to employers and the employees themselves right across Ontario, and we're educating people on the impact of mental stress in the workplace. But mental health concerns in the workplace are not just isolated to first responders. They can affect all of us. That's clearly apparent. But it's no coincidence that the companies that care the most about the safety of their workers are also the most productive. They're the most profitable. They're employers of choice. They're places where people want to work. Well, the same thing applies to the mental wellness of those workers as well. So we must continue our efforts to remove the stigma that still surrounds this issue. Workers need to feel like they can talk about it to the right person in the workplaces today. Employers need to provide that sense of safety in order for those conversations to take place. And employers have very good reason to do that above the human issues. It's the #1 driver of benefit costs. Not physical injury, not pills that will cure a cold or whatever some pills do. What drug plans do for mental health is what's driving the cost of mental health in our workplaces today. Tomorrow is Bell Let's Talk Day, so if these conversations are not taking place where you work, tomorrow may be that very, very good day to get them started. If you send out a text, I think they donate 5 cents, and those 5 cents add up pretty quickly. It's either text or tweets, I'm not sure which, but it begins with a T. So we're also making it clear in no uncertain terms that violence and harassment in the workplace in Ontario will simply not be tolerated either. That the day where that was tolerated is long gone. We've made changes to the Occupational Health and Safety Act last year. And what that is going to do is reinforce the responsibility of employers when it comes to dealing with these types of incidents in the workplace. Incidents of violence and incidents of harassment can no longer be swept under the rug. They must be dealt with, and they must be dealt with properly. So what does this all mean? It's a fulfillment of our province. It's a fulfillment of the province, of the promise that we made to this province that we would modernize our labor laws, that we would create that modern economic environment. It's a recognition that this modern economy must benefit everybody. It's a commitment to ensuring equality in our workplaces. It's a pledge to make sure that Ontario workplaces remain the safest in the world. And yes, our economy is doing well. Yes, our workplaces are safe, but we can do better. We should be very, very proud of what we've done in health and safety in this province in the past 10 years, but we shouldn't be satisfied for a second. We want to do better. We can do better. We want to make sure the lives of everyone who lives and works in this great province become better, and that everybody shares in the prosperity. Now, we have a choice to make. We can keep on top of the trends in labor and employment law to ensure that we have fair and an economically competitive set of rules that govern Ontario, or we can get left behind as other jurisdictions attract those businesses and those workers who want and need a modern economic environment in order to thrive. Well, we've chosen the former. What recent political movements around the world will tell us is that perhaps people feel like government isn't paying attention to the daily challenges that they face. People need to know that government is paying attention, that we understand the challenges that many families face, and that we're committed to finding the solutions. That's our challenge, and I think collectively we're up to it. I've been a politician now for over 31 years, so it's no surprise to you that I believe that the political system can work in a positive way, that you can have that positive change that politics can bring about if done properly. Our government's committed to doing politics right and to improving the lives of all Ontarians. The real strength of politics comes from the partnerships that we have with each other, from meeting with each other, from listening to each other, from valuing each other's opinions. It's about respect. And I firmly believe we can bring respect back to politics, even if it's only one little meeting at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you again for welcoming me here this afternoon. The modern economy in Ontario, the modern economic workplace in Ontario, won't just be built by any government. Everybody is going to have a role to play. Everybody needs to pull together on this. So I really want to thank you for taking some time out of your own busy days. Thank you for the interest. Thank you for learning more. Thank you for being a part of this. And I thank you for your commitment to helping us create a better Ontario for everybody. Thank you very much for having me this afternoon.
Thanks very much, Minister. As I said at the outset, we've received a number of questions, and I hope I'll get to all of them. You touched on this in your talk. You were on the Select Committee on Mental Health. Can you talk about how that's relevant to your current role as Minister of Labour?
Okay,
Sure.
excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I have to admit the mental health issue came as a little bit of a surprise to me. At the time I was asked to chair the Select Committee on Mental Health and Addictions for the province, I'd been in politics by then, I'd say somewhere around 22 years. I thought I had my community figured out. I'd served on the Health and Social Services Committee at the Region of Halton, Town of Oakville, and pretty well, I thought, knew what people were facing on a daily basis. I'll tell you, that was an eye-opening experience for me as a politician. It was something that I didn't realize that silently behind the scenes, and perhaps out of shame, perhaps out of embarrassment, people were living some pretty bad lives. People were dealing with some things that they just didn't feel they could step forward from, and they didn't feel that there was a response from government. And when you started to realize the magnitude of that, you realized that government had a role to play, but you couldn't help but think that this was impacting on our businesses as well, that our workplaces were suffering as a result of this, and there was a role for business. When you get to the addictions issues as well, you knew there was a role for business, for government. I know a lot of organized labor had involved themselves in those issues and set up their own treatment center. But what you clearly found was that there was a fractured system in the province of Ontario. There was a lot of people working quietly behind the scenes, but in nowhere near a coordinated way. And during the Select Committee hearings, people came out in droves. And I think they just reached that point of frustration that they said, this simply isn't good enough. Government's got to get better at this. We got to tackle this issue head on. We got to talk about it. We got to remove the stigma. And I think in a short period of time, I have to say after 31 years in politics, As much as those people that would advocate for changes in mental health, I know are frustrated, I've never seen an issue take off so quickly. It used to be I'd go into a meeting to try to convince people to talk about mental health a little bit, and you felt like you were pulling the words out of their mouth on a string. It was very, very reluctant. Well, it's got to the point now it's hard to shut them up. You walk into the thing, and they want to talk about mental health. They're excited about it. They're enthusiastic about it. And when you see what Bell Canada is doing tomorrow, see the way that's gathered steam, you get a sense where we are making some progress.
Thank you. Second question. President Trump has a very pro-business and protectionist agenda. What impact will that have on Ontario's labor agenda?
Well, that's where the balance comes in, because often what I'm hearing from people is that they represent a certain constituency or jurisdiction. And organized labor, for example, those people that advocate for people in vulnerable work, and we'd say, look, we need these changes. We've got to have these changes. This has gone on for far too long. We're seeing a rise in temporary work. We're seeing a rise in part-time work. We're not seeing people share. Let's do something about that. The other side of the coin is obviously, well, we need to remain competitive. We need to be, there's no sense changing all these rules, making me uncompetitive, and then not having any jobs at all. So you've got to come forward with, I think, what is a balance. I think in the past we've had good trade relations with the United States. It's early days, but so I think free trade in some respects has worked for Ontario. In other respects, I think people still have some issues with it. But you also have to think that what does it mean what is President Trump saying that it also means something very important to the people that live in his own country. And that is, if you look at Ontario, Ontario is the number one trading partner for somewhere between 20 and 30 states in the United States. So it's not Russia, it's not China, it's not Great Britain, it's Ontario. So the trade relationship between the two of us is something that I think is beneficial for both people. But certainly what I'm saying is that in the province of Ontario, we've managed to prosper since Confederation with a sense of decency in our workplaces, with a sense that we owe each other something, that we belong to the Canadian Club, or we belong to the Chamber of Commerce, or we belong to organized labor because we feel we're a part of something bigger, that we've got a role to play in this. And I don't see that changing very much, really, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you. I have two questions here which I think are the same, or similar. What were the benefits of removing the enforcement abilities away from the Ontario College of Trades and bestowing that power on an arbitrator? And then similarly, you spoke of safety. I presume you mean public safety. Your government buried in a finance omnibus bill changes to the compulsory trades, changes to enforcement, and weakening of those standards. So yeah, can you please comment on that?
Yes, I will. I'm a very strong supporter of the College of Trades. I've been there from day one. I remain a supporter of the College of Trades as it exists today. Skilled work in the province of Ontario is done by skilled people today. That has not changed. Enforcement is done by the College of Trades. That has not changed. Despite advice to me from others that I should change that, it has not changed. The review of the enforcement procedures of the College of Trades is being undertaken by the College of Trades itself, despite advice to me that we should get somebody else to do it. I firmly believe that the College of Trades can do what it was supposed to do in the first place, and that is give a level of self-regulation to the skilled trades in the province of Ontario that exists in other professions today. And that's not just only in enforcement, in any other aspect of the regulation of that trade itself. You see, we have a college of teachers, we've got a college of physicians and surgeons, we've got the Law Society of Upper Canada, we've got the College of Dental Hygienists. I could go on and on about professions that are capable of regulating themselves. It's not just about enforcement. Enforcement sometimes is a part of it, but I don't see the college as a police force. I see it having enforcement capabilities, and I see that it needs to, there's been 2 reports issued that have told us that enforcement needs to be reviewed, that it needs to be updated. And I'm quite supportive. I'm looking forward to the work I receive back on the college as to how that enforcement should take place. What I think the person, and enforcement is taking place today. We're not removing enforcement from the College of Trades at all. What I think the person is saying is that in the past, if somebody had a problem with the enforcement, if I received a ticket, where I would take my appeal is to the Justice of the Peace. It's being determined in legislation that that appeal should go to the Labor Relations Board. Some people don't agree with me on that, and I believe it's the best way to go. I'm committed to the College of Trades. I believe that the people that were the founders of the College of Trades that had the idea that we need to be true to those principles. So I've got great respect for the building trades in the province of Ontario. I want to continue to work with them. There's some differences of opinion. I'm of the opinion that we can overcome those differences of opinion.
Okay, thank you. We're almost out of time. I'm going to give you one more question, and my apologies if I didn't get to everybody's question. In fact, I know I didn't. So this is a question on temporary work, temp agency workers. Do you see the changing workplace review addressing the poor working conditions that face temporary agency workers who are being used by companies, not just for short-term assignment, but on a permanent basis?
Yeah, that's a growing trend in the province of Ontario, and I think I outlined that in some of my remarks, in that you will go into companies today in the province of Ontario, you'll see sometimes you'll see a very small management team, and the rest of the workforce is made up by temporary employees. That, I don't think, is the workforce that the average Ontarian envisions their own child or their own son or their daughter entering. I think the expectations we have are much, much higher. Is there a role for temporary work? Yes, there is. I think there is. Is the growth we're seeing in temporary work something that's sustainable or something that's even desirable? I don't think it is to the average Ontarian. So certainly I don't want to, I'm not suggesting we don't have temporary help agencies, but I think we need to take a very long and hard look at how they operate, why they're proliferating, why is that demand for a temporary workforce growing at such a rate. And really, temporary work was one of the major reasons, not the only reason, but was one of the major reasons we had the Changing Workplaces Review in the first place.
Great. Thank you, Minister. Thank you for your great questions. I'd now like to invite Canadian Club Director Nikki Holland to formally thank the Minister and close our session today.
Thank you.
Minister, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for giving us something to think about when we go home tonight. Although my child's only 3 and not working yet, thank God, although I think about it at times, putting him to work. I know we're going to all look at our families a little bit differently this evening. Thank you for giving us a pause to think about how wonderful our lives are and where we work, and also for reminding us that we can always do a little bit better. We're pretty excited about what you said, and I think for us, and at least for me, your passion and the way that you spoke, it's clear to us that you love what you do. And I joke with some of my friends that this Minister of Labour loves being the Minister of Labour. It's an honor, I think, to sit around the cabinet table, but I know that when you got this portfolio and then you remain in the portfolio, that you love every day of it, and you can see it in the way that you speak to people and that you speak about the trades. It's also my honor today to extend another round of thanks to the Carpenters District Council of Ontario and to Bruce Power for being today's sponsors, to the Ontario General Contractors Association for being today's event sponsor, and to let everybody know that this concludes our program today. It will be broadcast on Rogers TV in the days to come. We're grateful to Rogers TV and to 680 News for their continuing promotion of Canadian Club events. We'd like to also thank mediaevents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC for live streaming today's events. To learn more about the club, please visit us at thecanadianclub.org. Thank you for joining us today. This meeting is now adjourned.